Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to the December 17th. I won't say regular because usually we don't have a regular meeting, but it is a regular meeting of the scheduled meeting of the board of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. I'll call it to order at 9:31. Certainly want to welcome everybody here. I know everybody's had a busy schedule, so we'll try to get through this as efficiently as possible. As a reminder, Emily Chandler is serving as the meeting host. So if those of you online have connection problems or issues with technology, please contact Emily through the chat feature. Today's meeting is being live streamed on UTRCA's YouTube channel. Please refrain from whispering conversations while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the extremely sensitive microphones. When the squares glow red, the microphones are muted, and as we see, they are green, so they are on. If you're a board member attending online, we have Scotty, we have Harj, and I know that there's Peter as well. So excellent. Please have your camera on during the meeting, especially during voting. We won't be able to see that. Do we have any regrets? Excellent. So with that, I will read the territorial acknowledgement. We begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather on is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Luapec peoples, who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and regions of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nations of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the original people of Turtle Island. And then we'll move on to modifications of the agenda. Does anybody have any modifications in there? Andy?
Sure, I'd like to suggest we move item 7 up to prior to item 6.1.
So is there a seconder for that? Skylar, please, and discussion. Any particular reason?
I just I'm thinking because it might take a little while. The councilors from London have a meeting at 1 o'clock, and this will move things along a little faster, I hope.
Excellent. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Any interest? Being done. I don't believe we have any presentations and delegations, so now we'll move to go into a closed session.
No, you can still move. You can still do it.
Oh. Sorry. I believe the item was to go between 5 and 4 to 5. Oh. Okay, excellent. So we will do administrative business. A mover and a seconder to receive the minutes from the November 26th meeting. You and Paul, discussion on those, any questions, concerns? Danny?
Do we have a pool of when we're going to hear about fees? Is it going to be Friday at 4 o'clock again?
That's item 5.3. I can discuss.
Yeah, so we can do that when we get there. Any further discussion on those? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There is no business arising for the minutes, and so we'll go to correspondence. And certainly the minister's letter was received on the direction for that just recently and added. So I'll turn that over to Tracy for comment.
Yeah, so just arriving December 12th, we received a direction from the minister extending the direction for conservation authorities regarding fee changes associated with planning, development, and permitting fees. So this is again to freeze the fees for the entire calendar year for 2025. And it goes on to state that it is a requirement for conservation authorities not to change the amount of the fee charges or the manner in which it determines the fee for any program or service related to reviewing and commenting on planning and development related proposals or land use planning policies or for permits issued by conservation authorities. This direction is intended to support less costly approvals in order to help increase housing supply and affordability in Ontario. So we'll be forwarding around the letter. Chair Brian had indicated that he'd also wanted to thank municipalities for their advocacy And we understand as well from AMO and Anna's representation there that there's a continued advocacy through that avenue for Conservation Authority fees to be frozen.
Yeah, just to comment a little bit further on that, it's just the same. I do want to thank the mayor of London, Josh Morgan, with his letter supporting that as well. Again, Anna, thank you so much. It's great to see AMO at that level supporting this. Certainly want to send a letter out, letting our member municipalities know that unfortunately we weren't this year. Unfortunately, that just leads to, we have to recoup those costs someplace. So there will be, those are included in the budget, but unfortunately that can't be subsidized this year. So certainly disappointed in that, but I think there's growing hope going forward. Sandy?
Just double checking, do we need to do make any changes to what we passed last time, our 2025 fee schedule? Okay,
Through the chair, I can confirm that no changes are required. It was anticipated that the fees free may be extended. And if we were going to update our fees, we wanted to do so in a more comprehensive manner. And so that would require a little bit more time and consultation with agencies and partners too.
thank you.
I need a motion to receive because it's not on the,
No.
no, we can have that. In the-
Yes.
But just to let the board know. Okay, so with that, I think if there's no more questions on that, we can entertain a motion to go into closed session. By Anna, George, second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Trees had to die.
A wall.
Oh, no.
You could do that with everything.
He's on her sleep.
That's not fair. She's using her big city pressure to pick on the rural, right?
You guys stick together.
Hope you just
Message.
continue straight ahead.
Yeah.
Cut down the middle.
Do something.
We're ready? Okay.
It's just good.
Okay, yeah, we'll just wait for staff here. And it post.
Altered or doesn't.
take away.
Yeah.
We paid for schnitzel
Yeah.
and unsalted butter. Low stress things you do.
Okay, item 6.1 is our strategic plan update, and I will through that. Tracy.
Thank you. Through the chair. As you noted in your agenda package, report 6.1, we included the presentation that was provided at last month's meeting that gave the overview of the consultation on our vision, mission, and values. The question meeting was if we've missed anything, but I think also just as important is to know if there's anything in the draft that you don't support. Certainly with these vision, mission, and values, there's that connection to our water fleet strategy. And we'd like to echo those same vision, mission, and values in that report. So that's been drafted by the right now. So certainly would welcome feedback. Some feedback last month, but we can hear anyone else's thoughts.
Excellent, yes, and we certainly also had some additional input through Mike Wallace from LDI, specifically recommending a mission statement. And so that's always appreciated when the public is involved and able to provide input. So appreciate that. But I will open the floor to discussion on what we see in the strategic plan update. Questions of the report? Did you want to add anything on your?
No, I think it's important to say to conserve and protect because protecting both the natural environment, but also the built up environment, it works both ways, like looking or thinking about the mandate the province gives to conservation authorities, it's covers both, protecting nature, but as well as people and the places that they live. So that was the reasoning for including the word protect into the vision statement. So that's all.
Skylar, please.
I give it 5 fingers. And I unfortunately wasn't able to participate in this session because of council meetings, but reading through everything, I felt that it really reflected how I feel about the Conservation Authority and what we do in our mission. So I'm very supportive of what you have put together.
And also make comments. I do appreciate the input from Mike Wallace. And there is the thing of including the language from legislation, which I'm always a fan of. The reason I can't support that is because the multi-pronged responsibilities that's one aspect that one legislation that the Conservation Authority falls under, but there's others as well from different ministries. So I think that's captured in the what we have here now. It's a balancing act, but I think I think that I want to thank the board. I know everybody's busy, and so some people couldn't participate, and that's always where we have a large board, and so some can, and there's always those opportunities for different input. But I think we got somewhere meaningful, and we think we got something that can be used, and not only in the watershed management strategy, but as we go forward. And certainly it was a very good process to try to get input from everybody and get everybody involved. So it was fun. In a fun way for sure.
Through the chair to staff, I think Mr. Wallace's concern is actually addressed, unless I missed it. It's in the strategy already, isn't it? Yeah, and frankly, I think that's where the rubber hits the road anyway. So, I mean, it's there, it's not missed. And it's reflected in what I think staff are gonna do in implementing the strategy, which is frankly, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think the strategy is more important than the vision, mission, values. Because the strategy implements all that stuff. That's the implementation that has to be consistent with legislation. So I think we're good.
With that, is there a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, which is that the results of strategic input sessions be received and staff be directed to finalize the vision, mission, and values be incorporated in the watershed management strategy? Paul? George? Discussion on that? Seeing consensus. Maybe we'll vote with fingers this time. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Excellent. I saw a lot of 5 fingers there, so that's good. Thank you very much, and that will be incorporated. One of the items we need to do for the end of the year. So now we will move down to another one, 6.2 watershed-based resource management. And I'm just going to show you here. While completing these requirements for the province does not simply check a box, having these strategies prepared highlights past reports and studies that guide the UTRCA. And that's certainly true. This is going to be an overarching strategy that will guide the authority for many years to come. Provide clarity on what we do and what we don't do, and always be a way to look back on that. So that's exciting opportunity there. So with that, I will turn it over to Tracy.
It's actually both myself and Tara, and I'm thinking that Tara might want to speak up at the podium, so maybe we should both go up there, or here you go. Yeah. Logistically, we hadn't figured out how we're present. I just wanted to thank staff, specifically Tara. It's been a tremendous amount of work pulling together, but you'll see from this presentation as well that detail that was collected. So what you've seen in your packages is that culmination of guiding information and recommendations that came out of that, but the amount of input sessions and discussion with staff collecting very much detailed information about all of our programs and services has been significant. So again, Tara's been instrumental in that. Eleanor has been instrumental in pulling it together and making it graphically look nice and of course legible and understood. So certainly helpful in that way too. So the next slide. And just kind of relying back to how things fit in. We just spoke about watershed strategy that follows that, but recognizing that we have a number of strategies that we've undertaken this year. Everything from our strategy, our asset management strategy, our water management strategy, climate change strategy, and First Nation engagement strategy. Efforts. But then again, where we really get to work is when we operationalize it and implement. That's some of the cases. An example would be our land management plans or communications plans. So lots of work still to do, but underpinning it all is that technical information. And from the strategic plan, we often saw that science-based decision making. Well, often that bottom layer is that technical information and how we do our business. So again, there's certainly the regulatory requirements, and I've said this a number of times. Yes, we've been mandated by the province to do this, but it's been a good thing. We've gleaned a lot of great information from it. It's required us to pull everything together and explain why we're doing what we're doing and tying that back into our mandatory programs. And I guess the key that I've seen through this is that integration. So much of what we do overlaps. Yes, it might be mandatory, it might be non-mandatory, it might be something in our municipality. So much of that is woven together, not only with our staffing complement and what we do, but the products. The requirements again are the Indigenous people's community partners in the public manner the authority considers advisable. So Tara will be talking a little bit about that engagement. And we must post it on our website by December 30th. And I'd say that there's been a broad range of approaches conservation authorities across the province. And again, it came back to what information they already had available. Let's say some CAs have had very recent strategic plans and I gleaned from that information. We've been very much doers. We've been doing the work on the ground and not putting things on paper. So this has been a little bit more exercise for us to write things down. So, and again, that scope has changed as well. We've tried to take a more broad scope, given our starting point. Again, others, depending on their size, depending on their information that they already had, their scope changed as well. So it's not a one size fits all. Again, it was meant to be a broad range, and we took that guidance from Conservation Ontario, provided a little bit of a summary document for CAs to consider to make sure that we were all consistent in at least the themes of what we were talking about. We're all talk about some of the engagement.
Yeah, so we did, first of all, I want to start off by saying there was a huge participation by all staff. I went to different unit meetings, got input from all the staff that way. We also ran 5 engagement sessions where all staff participated. First Nations were engaged through the shared waters approach, which is a water management strategy. A lot of the activities we have around water quality and water quantity come from that approach. So that engagement through the First Nations was incorporated into this strategy. And then we also did a public consultation piece on the website where you can see we had 756 visits to the page. And I really want to thank Emily, Amy, and Eleanor for setting up these social media sites. They do a fantastic job and allow us to summarize the information we receive. Out of the 85 contributions, which was basically an 11% engagement rate. So all the people that looked at the site, 11% of them then went on and provided contributions. And from that, a further 70, or from the 85, 72 people actually went a step further and provided written comments. So of those that did the survey, they could have stopped at a certain point and then qualified for the pass, but they actually went on and provided written comments. And that's a huge engagement piece that we're really excited about, because you usually only get about a 5% out of the total that contribute to give more information. So that was really, really exciting. We also looked at the contributors. 71% of them were from the general public. We also had staff that contributed as well, but of the majority that contributed, it was from the general public. And they mainly see us through our CA areas or through our education and partnerships. So that was all data we were able to collect from that survey. And then we had 53, sorry, downloads of the actual PDF. So we really see that site as being really, really worthwhile and very positive too, in terms of for this piece of the watershed strategy.
So again, when we go back to the purpose strategy, again, it's really to improve efficiencies and effectiveness. Again, it comes back to that integration that we see across all of our programs, whether they be our mandatory, our municipal, or our other programs and services, category 1, 2, or 3. So certainly the goal is to kind of reinforce and guide the development of the delivery of our programs to ensure that natural hazards, our heritage features, and we address those issues, challenges, and risks within the watershed. So really bringing that all together. So a huge part of it as well was summarizing past technical studies and that background information. We have a lot of data and information that we need from our work on the watershed over many years, but providing that summary reference to where that resource information is. Again, all that information informs those decision makings that we do through our broader approaches. So next slide, just a reminder of the categories of programs and services and what they include. I think I sound like a bit of a broken record, but when we're talking about those mandatory programs, it's about our natural hazards. It's about drinking water source protection and implementing the Clean Water Act. And it's about the conservation of our own lands for passive recreational uses. And then also prescribed regulations for the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network and the Provincial Groundwater Network. And that monitoring is only at local scale at certain sites. But I think that's some of the things that we've seen through the input of the results is the importance of having that monitoring information to then inform decision-making later on. The next slide. When we talk about our watershed approach, again, it's iterative. We kind of set our broader principles and objectives, and each step starts to build on itself. We characterize our watershed, through various means. We have the original 52 report. We have the watershed characterization that was done through drinking water source protection. We have a lot of information about our watershed, even more recently with the regular. Then we assess those issues and risks. And I think we've been doing this a little bit intuitively. Often funding availability has driven this, but this has provided us an opportunity to kind of step back and really solicit that input from the broader audience about what is seen as issue risks and challenges. Through the watershed strategy, we have recommendations on actions and costs were a little bit more challenging when we're dealing with budget, depending on the scope. So we have recognized that those costs will be evaluated through a normal budgeting process on an annual basis. And then implementing those actions. Certainly with all of our actions that we implement, either through a strategic plan or through the watershed strategy, we want to make sure that we're measuring them and monitoring the implementation. And then of course that review and update, part of any planning cycle, making sure that we're looking back and seeing on a regular basis on a 5-year interval, what needs to change, what are the new issues and risks and challenges in the watershed that we're seeing that are emerging. So with that, again, that cycle continues. So the next slide, I think this is where I'm going to hand things over to Tara for the next.
Okay, so we grouped our programs and services and then the activities within the programs and services under 6 main objectives, which you see here. And for each objective, there are about 2 or 7 program areas, and we have over 200 different activities that fall into the different program areas. I'm obviously not going to show you all 200 activities, but they are there. What I want to show you is with this graph, we really wanted to illustrate that the people and the talent we see as core to the organization. That's why it's in the center. And the other thing that this graph is trying to show is the interrelationship between all of our different objectives, program areas, and activities. Next slide. So like I said, for each program area, we have numerous activities. We have over 200, which I'm not going to show you, but I am going to focus on one in particular because I want to show you the information that was collected behind the scenes. So you guys saw the summary of the report, but there's a lot of information that sits behind that report. I'm going to focus on just the science and stewardship objective. And within that, I'm going to focus on the monitoring and other programs, program area. Within that program area, there's over 14 different activities that we've identified. I'm just going to show you 5 just so you get an idea of what we've done with all of them. But you can imagine for each one of these program areas, there's numerous activities under them. So this exercise that I'm going to show you was actually done for all the different activities. Yeah, so next slide. So here you go. So for each activity, we name the activity. We gave a brief description of what that activity is, what category it falls into, the different legislation, guidelines, policies that may pertain to that activity, as well as any related activities. So we're trying to link all our activities together to show the relationships between them. Next slide. So what I'm showing you are sort of 5 activities within the water quality monitoring section. The one in green here is identified as a potential gap. So that's telling us that that's an activity we would like to do. We see it as value, but it's just a gap right now. We haven't fully fleshed it out yet, and it all depends on how our operational plans come out in the strategic plan. But for each activity, we have the ones that we currently do, and then we have a bunch of gaps that we're saying we would like to do. All right, next slide. So then what we did is we then looked at the different challenges, issues, and risks in our watershed. And this was gleaned again from all those different consultation exercises I described originally. And we came up with 9 different sort of land or watershed level challenges, issues, and risks, which are listed here. And then what we did is we said, okay, for each one of these watershed challenges, issues, and risks, which of our activities could potentially address them? So the next slide. So again, I'm looking at those 5 activities that I showed you beforehand, and those across the top are all the different types of watershed challenges. So we just basically put an X in the ones that could potentially identify that particular watershed challenge. And then what I want to do is I want to focus in just on the severe weather and the invasives challenge. So then for each one of the challenges, and that's next slide, I then described, or we described as a group, how that potential activity could meet that challenge. So those first 5 were all identified as addressing perhaps severe water. or severe weather. And then it describes how those activities could each perhaps address or mitigate severe weather. And then the other one that I showed you was invasives. There was one activity out of those 5 that I showed you that actually could be used to address invasive species. Sorry?
It's just under
Yeah,
there.
it's under that
The
little.
very
bit.
end.
So what I'm trying to get at is the report you saw is a summary, but it doesn't show you all the data that sits behind it. So there's a lot of information on the activities that we currently do in terms of what are gaps and what could address potential challenges. The next one, yeah. So then we also have corporate strategy or challenges as well that were identified in the same way. And again, the exact same exercise was done for all of our activities and all of our challenges. All right, so then the next slide. So in summary, we actually see some of this information be used in a variety of ways. So those descriptions of all the different activities, we could incorporate those into our budgeting software. We can incorporate it into our position descriptions, potential funding applications, et cetera. So it's a lot of good information that was collected from staff to tell us exactly what they do. Like I said, we did some consultation, or in the future, we're going to do more consultation with municipalities, Indigenous peoples, community groups, and other interest holders. That'll be part of the strategic plan when we're developing the operational aspect of it. And then our identification and prioritization of those challenges, issues, and risks, as well as that analysis that identified which activities could mitigate them, are going to be considered in setting our priorities and developing our operational plans in the strategic plan. Okay, and that's sort of it as a brief summary.
Take any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions, Sandy?
First of all, just, overall, after getting the direction from the province to put all these plans together by the end of 2024, I looked at it and said, oh my gosh. And I'm sure staff had a different reaction. I just want to congratulate everybody who was involved in putting all this together. It's just a phenomenal amount of work, and the way you went about it just seems to be something we as a board can be really proud of in our staff. Specific to what Tara and Tracy had just presented, so I heard mention that there'll be an operational plan, and obviously an operational plan will have to be attached to money, to budget. Is that going to happen within the 2025 budget that we've already tentatively approved for circulation, or is it going to be further down the road?
Again, through the chair, certainly we do have some operational funding that we've applied. Some of those main projects that I think were the highest on the priority list, we've kind of earmarked for that. But again, recognizing that those operational plans, it's not that we're going to be doing them all in 2025. We're going to be spreading those out. So again, over the course of the strategic plan implementation. So those operational amounts are expected to change year over year. I'll say we've got a placeholder right now for some operationalizing of that. Those plans can be shifted a little bit, but some money is earmarked for that already.
And I'm assuming, based on what I've read, how everything has been divided up into categories. So there'll be some that are mandatory that may require levy, and others that may require outside funding because they're category 3 or maybe even category 2. So is that how it's going to play out?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is exactly what's intended. That's why with those detailed lists, everything has a category assigned to it. I know Christine, she's not here today. She had some appointments, but she's been instrumental in making sure our budgeting software as well recognizes the different category of programs, given those over 200 activity types, so that when we are looking at our budgeting, we're considering where the different funding sources are coming from too.
And last but not least, again, on the budget piece, part of our discussion of the 2025 budget was that, there's a large increase, but it's going to mitigate, it's going to come down. I'm hoping that's still applicable even with the implementation of the strategic plan. Just nobody likes surprises who's older than about 3 years old. So I'm sure the municipalities don't want to hear that. Oh, by the way, now that we've done this, there are new costs.
Well, I think that's where this comes into the strategic plan as well, comes into creating that certainty going forward. When you're planning about, you know, when you're doing stuff strategically, you're thinking, right? You're not just reacting. And so I think that's why this is such a great document, is that not only did it show, you know, that's why I love these forward thinking exercises. Because not only did it show where we've been, what we were doing, maybe where that's not working, maybe where we want to go. Now you can start to plan for that. And we know our staff are very good at finding funds, so they can mitigate that and maybe help municipalities reach their goals. So I think that's where it's, I think where it has the opportunity to, or maybe increase costs, but to plan for those.
I was just gonna add to that through the chair, and I look to Teresa, because when it comes to funding applications, when it's written down in a strategy like this, and we can align our funding applications with this is the priority that's identified in this overarching document, it really strengthens the application too. So kudos to staff to being able to apply for those different funding revenue streams too. So that's what quite effective.
Jim, please.
Thank you. So I'm going to echo a little bit on, I agree with Sandy and again, what you said, Brian. And it's real important. Staff's done a great job to get this done to this stage. So my real question is, during the whole process of pulling all these parts together, have we noticed current watershed strategies that may not be the strategy we want or aren't working or creating confrontation out there with our municipalities? And have we checked the box on a few things that we should look at this, this, and this, and if any come to mind, I'd be really interested in that. I think it's important when you do new things and strategies to make sure whatever you are doing is working. If it's not, you know, try and get it to work or try and make some changes or modifications.
Through the chair, great question, Jim, because I think that's some of the gap analysis maybe is where we found that we've been very much aligned with municipalities and from what we heard from the public about what we don't have. You know, when we're looking at severe weather and a broader strategy for how we look at severe weather events. When we look at invasive species on our lands, that actually came a lot through the land strategy discussion as well. Right, and still in the line there, where talking to municipalities about land management and everyone's challenges. So I think we saw a lot of alignment, if anything, and a need for some of these gaps to be filled. Looking to Tara to see if there's anything else that kind of jumped out that
Yeah, and I think
been a confrontation piece or something where we're not aligned.
I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't say confrontation. I think staff did a great job identifying some of the gaps because of what they know that municipalities are asking for. I mean, there's, to add to that, it's the climate change piece that all municipalities are kind of charged with. There's even First Nations piece that we are looking at a strategy for First Nations engagement, because again, we're long overdue in that. That's an UNDRIP TRC obligation. So a lot of these things have been identified outside already. And I see us in alignment with them rather than anything that we've identified that might be in conflict.
I think what you'll find is now that we know where we're gonna go, when the implementation piece comes in, that's where you'll have that realignment to make sure that if it's not with this, then when the staff bring the implementation in, then that will be brought into alignment with this piece here. So certainly a lot of more, sorry, staff, there's still a lot more work to do. You just gave yourselves a whole lot more job. Further questions? Comments, your report, make sure look online. Seeing none, is there a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to approve the water-based resource management strategy? Skylar and Jean, is it further discussion? You know, I want to thank Sandy because Sandy said exactly what I wanted to say. You know, I'll just reiterate it because I can. Thank you to staff for all the work that you're doing. This is huge. This is a lot of work. And again, with all these these tasks we were given from the province to get done by a date soon approaching. It seemed like a long time away when we first happened, but it's here. And it certainly couldn't have been done by us. We need those experts, which you are. And so certainly I think we should give staff a round of applause for this and everything else. So, not only do we know our authority way better, I'm sure you do as well, and then you know, your different areas and where we're gonna go and where we've been, so it's been a worthwhile. I just wish they had it maybe timed it out a little further to allow for some, but here we are. That, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to item. You have a round of applause for that as well. 6.3. Hazard Infrastructure Asset Management Plan. I'll turn that right over to Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Brian, through the chair. Certainly another project that was significant work to develop. Certainly when we're talking about our flood and erosion control infrastructure, it was unfortunately that this complex set of assets was kind of our first asset class that we really dived into. We kept saying, why couldn't this be fleet that we did first? Because when we're talking about this infrastructure, it is a different beast, I will say. But certainly, as reflected in the report, this was a learning opportunity for staff to become more versed and more familiar with asset management planning as a whole. And involves significant collaboration as well. And I know Christine isn't here, but she's behind this 100%. She's been pushing for asset management planning for some time, and it's not lack of willingness to wanting to do it. It's making sure that we're also doing it right. With enough capacity to do so. So with Mike joining the team in this capacity, his being able to lead us through the first asset class, Huda and Jillian and Sarjeet providing much of the technical information that went into supporting this information. And of course, Chris Tasker leading the report writing as well. So a huge group that went to provide this plan that you see before you. So. And we recognize that this is the first. We want to continue to evolve and mature the asset management planning within the organization, but even when this report and some of the recommendations that came out of this asset management class reflect that as well. This is a little bit different than some of the other deliverables. There wasn't a lot of additional requirements and stipulated in the mandatory programs and services regulation. So it certainly it meets those requirements as determined by staff. And there isn't a whole list of regulated or legislative responsibilities that go along with that. But certainly having this completed by the end of the year was one of them. So with that, I'll pass it over to Chris Tasker if he has anything else to add to the report. Or if you have any questions.
Sure, I think Tracy, I think you covered things very well and comprehensively. It is our first run at this. We do expect that it will continue to evolve. I think it's done a really good job of kind of pulling it all together. But the challenge is that we're kind of, I don't know whether the cart's beside the horse, so to speak. The details are at this. We struggled with what level of detail to include in it. We obviously would like to delve into it deeper, but I think it's time to circle back and focus our efforts on more the strategic level to give us that guidance and direction. We can continue to evolve this asset class and the subclasses within it and be prepared for more detail. But I think that's kind of the progression. Struggled with at what level do we engage the board and are asking for it to be approved. In all likelihood, that strategic asset management plan is that thing that you're going to want to sink your teeth into. And as I said, this one's kind of a little ahead of itself in that regard, but we were working towards meeting the requirements of the act to get it completed, well, within the next week or two. Feel we've done that, probably exceeded the level that we expected to be at, but we do acknowledge that there's still a lot more work to be done on it. You want to add anything else?
Excellent. Questions on the report? Tyler.
No questions. I just want to say I like it. I like all the information. The one thing I do like, though, the city of London has some asset management plans, and what I like is they have like a dial that shows like poor condition or very poor is in red, good is yellow, and great is green. And so then kind of depending on what it is, you can just do a quick glance and be like, wow, that one's falling apart versus that one looks great. So for iteration, I found that really helpful from a high level, like not being able to fully understand some of the language, not being familiar with the asset. Just having that scale was helpful. So maybe feedback for future iteration, but otherwise, you guys have done a really good job.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we struggled with adding some graphics, some infographics or whatever to it. We had a few ideas and would like to include those. We've also had a recent discussion with some staff at the city and brought this subject up. And the more we can try and get our terminology and our standards aligned, the easier it's going to be, because we do share a lot of these assets with them. And you know, we struggled with things like condition ratings, where some of the consultant studies use a slightly different scale than we've landed on. We've tried to land on a standard. So we may end up having to tweak things a little bit as we move forward to incorporate some other factors, other measures and that sort of thing. And some of those graphics, I guess, to make it read easier.
Further questions?
Thank you. I thought the report was really well done. It's an excellent starting position. I really liked your recommendations. Because I think that's really important, extending it out for a longer period of time and then hopefully eventually getting some costs in there. So especially the benefiting municipalities will have an idea of what might be coming down the road over the next 10 years. And there's always that asterisk of maybe WECI, maybe not. At least there's some sort of, you know, I think that'll be really good communication.
And I'll just jump on there. We had Tracy and I had discussion, or I guess we're at the pre-meeting. That's one of the biggest things that I think can come out of this is that we're all the authorities are going through this process where they're going to have this. And so I think it's going to highlight the need for asset management throughout these and the funds that are going to come up with them, but it's going to create a lot more competition with the WECI dollars. So I think that's where, you know, through Conservation Ontario or through other groups, that we municipalities to show, okay, we need to do some advocacy work here. We have the data, we have the information, especially as it gets refined over time. Say this is what our true level of funding, what we need to. So let's get on this now and plan for that. So it's not just a reactionary item of when things are too late. And that's really the helpful thing. And I know that Dean probably has, you know, some advice to share. I know he's been very active with his municipality of sharing this. And again, when we're getting stuff on the same line that the municipalities know this asset management, they're responsible for it. It's just not theirs, right? So that information sharing is going to be huge to help plan for the future. And so those funds are ready and willing to go when time is necessary to do it. Asset management plans are always they're one of the most living documents you can have because they're constantly changing. So I don't ever expect it to be perfect the first go around. There's a lot of learning that has to be done, especially with first go around, but I think this is an excellent one for sure. So it's going to serve us very well. It's another document that's going to inform our the operations for a long time to come and hopefully stabilize that funding need going forward so you can plan for it. Further questions? Seeing none, is there a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Mark and Jim. Discussion? We have another round of applause. Excellent, I like that. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Important to celebrate the things. This is a lot of work. And with that, we'll go to 6.4. The erosion control operations plan, and I'll turn that over to Tracy. Tracy.
Yes, through the chair, certainly you saw a number of the operations plans last month. This was the last type of operations plans for erosion control structures. But certainly I'll pass it over to Chris if he has anything to add to the uniqueness of this type of operation plan.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be the easiest one to write. but it didn't turn out to be quite as easy. One of the things that it had the advantage of is we were going through the asset management planning and getting final pieces of that together. So you may notice some subtle differences between this and the other operational plans, and a better connection with the asset management planning. But you know, that was a bit of a challenge, but we didn't want to make this one that much different than the rest of them. Apologies for not having it ready in time to deliver the last meeting. But with this, I think we've got the requirements met to have the necessary operational plans in place.
Questions of the report?
Report.
Thank you, Sandy. Seconded by Anna. Discussion? No, I think that, you know, this is it. This is everything. And just can't reiterate enough how much we're appreciative of that. It's a huge task and a lot of work over 4 years of even trying to, or I guess it's 5 years almost now, trying to figure out what stuff meant when it came out. And then putting the work in. Certainly no need to apologize for not, of having it here this month, because it is quite a task to get all this stuff done, and just appreciative of that it is there. So if there's no further discussion, we will send everything to the government. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well done, well done. Okay, with that, I will go on to 6.5, environmental planning policy manual update and interim response mechanisms. That over, Tracy.
Yes, certainly I'll just do a very high level introduction of this, just because you can see in the report, we have a very old policy manual that we've been following. Certain aspects of it we don't follow at all, because they're no longer relevant legislation. The legislation overrides our manual, but certainly trying to again operationalize some of the policies that are becoming a little bit more challenging. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jenna and Christy to provide a little bit more of an introduction background.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the board. The purpose of this report is really to look at the powers that have been invested to the administrative review officers and offer an extension. We found a few key policy issues, largely related to wetland management policies, floodplain management policies. As Tracy just noted, some of our legislative and regulatory responsibilities have shifted, and how those are reflected in our policies are really posing some challenges for our staff. So what we've come up with is an interim response mechanism, and that's what we're asking the board to consider today, is to allow our administrative review officers, being both Jenna and Tracy, to guide staff through some tough decision-making processes. Right now, we're really looking at some of our more prohibitive policies. This is really intended to offer a path forward. We know there is a new environmental policy manual coming. We know that there's going to be a shift in some of the policy direction and language within that policy manual. And right now it's putting staff in a challenging position to say, no, but wait for 3 months, wait for 6 months, wait until we go out to consultation, just wait. We're really looking to be able to establish a path forward. And we think that this interim response mechanism will help us do that. As indicated in the overview discussion paper, we have narrowed down where our most challenging areas. And that really is related to wetlands, just because of some of our change in jurisdictional responsibilities, and floodplain management, due to largely what's outlined in both planning and regulatory legislation, as well as some of our more policy-based decisions. So 2-zone flood policies that we see across our different municipalities are variable and not overly consistent with what we have in our policy manual. So what we're really looking for is some consideration by the board to empower our administrative review officers to help staff move along with some of these decision-making processes, while we continue our efforts on updating this policy manual. As we're all aware, it seems like a very fluid process right now. We're trying to align and reflect all the changes, but we're also taking an opportunity to learn from what our other CA colleagues across the province are doing in their policy updates. So while it does seem to be taking a while, We're trying to come up with, what the accepted practices are. We're leaning really heavily on the criteria of the CO guideline for this interim period. There's some really great evaluation criteria outlined within, and we think that this is a really great tool that we can use to enhance the decision-making process of these administrative review officer reviews. So with that, Joe and I are happy to answer any questions or offer any further explanation. The discussion paper idea was really offered by Tracy as a way to kind of overview these issues that we're seeing and why we think we need these response mechanisms and how they are really intended to benefit now and inform responsive policy direction in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I went through this and have raised some concerns with staff and had a good discussion with Christy and Joe ahead of the meeting. And they addressed my concerns with some amendments to what's in front of us. So where I'm coming from, Mr. Chair, is, it's great that we're updating the manual. And it sounds like there's a little bit of a calm period where we're able to do that without scrambling for because of additional changes coming from the province. So I like the discussion paper support to the change to wetlands and recognizing, 17 municipalities with 17 different official plans and in particular, some municipalities permitting recreation of wetlands, et cetera. But I was less comfortable with changing everything within the manual. But at the same time, recognizing that there are opportunities to move things ahead because there will be changes anyway, and the policies are somewhat restrictive in light of the changes in regulation. So what I'm proposing is, the first part that says we received the report with the discussion paper and the overview and discussion paper 2, wetland management policies for information. And then added, though, that we as the board authorize the administrative review officers, and I've got this in writing that I'll hand to Michelle, to exercise discretion, decision-making regarding certain policies of the Environmental Planning Policy Manual, revised 2013, on an interim basis, and that this discretionary decision-making be limited to wetland management policies and certain floodplain management policies relating to dry access requirements. And there's like 8 different sections that applies to. I'm not going to read them all unless the board would like to. And then that remaining part that's in the original recommendation, that we get a staff report back no later than March 31st, summarizing the instances and outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd be happy to move that if there's a seconder.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Skylar, thank you very much. Discussion. Sandy, would you like to
Yes.
Thank you.
It's directly from staff. So it's staff suggestions for how they can achieve what they're trying to achieve without leaving at least this member of the board a little uncomfortable with opening it up completely to discretion. And I think this is a good way to move it forward, get the rest of the information when more work is done on the manual, so that we're completely comfortable with the changes being proposed by staff, which will ideally speed applications along, and secondly, also reduce the number of hearings. So there's value in what's being done. Just personally, I was a little uncomfortable opening it up widely without seeing a discussion paper supporting the change.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Chair. I have confidence in the staff, but where I'm kind of at a loss right now, can you quickly give me a scenario where this decision-making may come in, like an example?
Sure, I could do that through you, Mr. Chair. I think what we illustrated in the discussion paper for wetlands, for example, we have various wetlands that are under a certain size criteria that haven't been mapped. And through the regulation text, just because they're mapped doesn't mean that they're not regulated. And what's happening is they're coming up through environmental impact studies, through plans of subdivisions. And these are wetlands that are considered to be non-significant, low impact to flooding and erosion. But we don't currently have a wetland policy that allows a permissive approach to allow maybe the loss of those smaller wetlands subject to compensation. It's just strictly a no. So it's very difficult for staff through the planning process to work proactively through those scenarios when we're not at a Section 28 hearing process yet. The other example I can give with dry or safe access, safe access is the minimum standard the province tells us. So certain level of water depth and velocity is safe for people to come and go from the property. We're allowed or permitted to exceed those standards. And in some cases it's warranted, but not in all cases, I think is the case that we're starting to see here. So our policies currently for new development require dry access, which means, no floodwaters in the entrance. But the minimum provincial standard is minimum. So there are situations we're being faced with that based on a risk assessment or looking at the development, that it may be appropriate to allow safe access. But again, our policies are a barrier to allow staff to work through that process to have a positive outcome. So those are kind of the two main processes that we've been seeing over the last 3 months since Chrissy and I have started, that our staff are really struggling with. How do we work through these processes when staff support it, but we have policies that prevent staff to have a positive outcome?
Thank you very much for that, because it makes good sense for you to be able to expedite things when there's something that is eventually going to change. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm just wondering, based on Sandy's amendments, do staff still feel comfortable that they'd be able to do that process? And get confirmation.
Through you, Chair to the board. Yeah, so the two that we started with, wetland management is probably our #1 topic of discussion in planning and regs right now. So absolutely, that would be helpful. We figure with these, even a scoped delegated authority, we can probably start work on, between 10 and 12 different files that are currently just spinning their tires. So while, the full breadth of the recommendation, it would help us do more. There are certainly some quick wins that can result from even just a scoped permission right here.
Further discussion? I'm certainly supportive of this. I think that not only does it give, I come from Sandy's perspective, I feel more comfortable having a scoped. It also gives direction and clear direction to the community as well, as this is where we're going to look for these. It's not just a blanket policy item. I think that can create confusion as well as more challenges for staff on that file. So, but I certainly appreciate staff's proactive approach on this of saying, hey, we have opportunities here which can be addressed. And certainly would be addressed as we go through looking at different files. So I don't have any problem with not jumping the gun on this, but being proactive and certainly through a scoped approach. And we'll have reports come back to the board so that we can do our due diligence on oversight and make sure that we feel comfortable. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving right along. So we have done reports in camera, so we're good there. Reports from information. We will go to product status update. Is there a mover and a second to receive the report from Skylar and George? Any discussion on that? And I think this is an amazing tool, and we see there's going to be a lot more turning to blue, and I think we'll see this carry through to the general meeting, and then some things will be able to be wrapped up and start over again. But certainly it's been a valuable tool to see where things are, and it certainly shows how busy the authority has been. So the discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So, here's the Thames River Current. As always, it's lots of great stuff going on there, and of course we have some turtles. They're always fantastic. There's another Giving Tuesday, which people were very generous, and that's very much appreciated. Lots of other great news articles in there. Is there a mover and a second to receive that? Andy and Hugh. Further discussion? Members sign everybody up? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And my apologies. Apologies. There we go. Okay, reports, committee updates, Finance and Audit Committee. There's no update for that. Hearings Committee did meet on November 26th, and there was a decision made. Put that in the online there. Any questions from those? None. Yeah, just to receive this information for 9.1, 9.2. Skylar, and we'll take Scotty. I saw your hand up last time. Online there. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Just to share comments, I just want to thank everybody for their time this month and their efforts over the last year on the board. Certainly been a busy one. Certainly want to thank staff for all their work over the last year. It has been an extremely busy one. And hope everybody gets to spend some time with some loved ones over the next couple weeks and get ready for another busy year. It doesn't seem to slow down at all. I know everybody's still going strong. So with that, I will leave it there. Well, I just want to thank staff. I know you're almost done with me. Again, I got to reiterate what's happened up until this point. It's a monumental day when all those reports are finally done. I know that means a lot more work to come, but it's just unbelievable that we're here and that all those items got done and hopefully brings stability and a better organization. We're certainly not the same organization as we were in 2019, and these are just going to lead to better and better understanding and a stronger one at the end. So I think it's worth it. Just again, can't thank everybody enough for all the hard work that's been put into getting here, both at the board and staff. So thank you, everybody, and have a great holiday. And I'll turn that over to members' comments. You.
I would wish everybody on staff and everybody on the board a very Merry Christmas and a very prosperous New Year.
Thank you very much. Further comments? Yeah.
I'll just jump in and thank the chair, Brian, for the work and steering the ship through some up and down periods.
And great support from the board, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great advice from everybody, so that's. Any further comments? Seeing none. Amazing.
Just a couple of reminders about, yes, I've been busy doing budget presentations. Making my way around. If I haven't been to you yet, certainly your clerk to see if that, or your council to see if that's something you wanted. Yeah, still scheduling a few more into January. And again, I'd like to go back to some of the same comments that have already been shared around this table about the amount of work that's come from staff. I'm looking over at the management table, management team. It's been a lot of work. We've been busy. We feel like we've been running this year. Yes, there's still more to do, but this big hurdle is something that we've leaned on a number of key staff to help us deliver on. So appreciation to everyone that's been involved with these efforts. Again, and through the strategic planning exercise, one of the things that I heard from the staff sessions is how much board support has been appreciated. The staff certainly feel that way as well, and I know I do, but wanted to make sure that everyone's aware how much that is highly regarded in organizations. Appreciate everything because yes, it has been a year. There has been a lot, but staff feel that the board have always been supportive in the efforts that they have put forward. And we've heard that over and over again today. And so with that, also wishing everyone a great holiday and for some rest and relaxation. Come back in the new year. A few more things on the agenda, but let's have a break.
Yes.
With that, we will move for adjournment. Move for the second here. Skylar and Anna, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
What are you doing for Christmas? You going to?